What's up, Taiwan? I'm Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Accusations of espionage are flying around Taiwan's presidential office. Several more people with deep connections to the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the president himself are being accused of spying for China. Reese Ayers is live with us in Taipei with more on this developing story. Reese, who is being accused in this spy saga?
Well, there were three individuals identified by a report by Mirror Media, surnamed Cho, Huang, and Wu, all with various positions of authority and levels of access within the Democratic Progressive Party, and also within that building behind me, the presidential office here in Taipei. They've all been accused of leaking sensitive information to China, and all this comes just one day after a former aide to an ex-legislative House Speaker, Yoon, was released on bail. So let's zoom in on one of the people named in that report so we can get a better sense of just how deep this goes. So Mr. Wu, he had been working for the DPP central headquarters for a long time, since before even Tsai Ing-wen, the former president, was elected in 2016. He then worked under Lai Ching-te when he was vice president in 2022. He was then carried on with the president when he assumed office in 2024, acting as an aide to the president himself. So these are people who have really direct access to the leadership of Taiwan. Now, according to that report, Wu's colleagues said that soon after Lunar New Year in February, he kind of disappeared. His Facebook account was deactivated, and we now know that was probably because he was being investigated. Wu and the others accused currently being held incommunicado pending the prosecutor's investigations.
And has there been any response from the presidential office? All four of them were affiliated with the DPP, right?
Yeah, they were indeed. The presidential office has released a rather generic statement. They said that they don't comment on any individual cases or insinuations made by politicians. And they said that anyone found spying will face severe punishment. They then went on to say that China is increasingly trying to infiltrate Taiwan, but recognized an urgent need to strengthen the country's national security legislation. This all comes less than a month after President Lai Ching-te held a press conference in the office behind me, a very serious announcement on this very issue, where he said that Taiwan needs to respond to China's growing attempts to infiltrate the country, including through recruiting political spies. And then he laid out a long series of measures that he said Taiwan must do to protect its sovereignty. The opposition Kuomintang have also jumped onto this story, accusing the DPP of allowing communist spies into Taiwanese politics, which is a slightly ironic twist of fate, given that it's the general perception in Taiwan that it's the KMT that have closer ties to Beijing.
Thanks, Reese. That was Reese Ayers reporting live from the presidential office in Taipei. President Lai says a 32% tariff imposed by the U.S. on most Taiwanese products is unreasonable. Semiconductors, Taiwan's largest export to the U.S., have been exempted, but there are still deep concerns that the tariffs will cause economic pain for Taiwan. Chris Gorin is in the newsroom here in Taipei with more. Chris, how is Taiwan responding?
Well, Tiffany, today is a national holiday, so the response is a bit more muted than it might normally be. The cabinet is going to have a press conference later this afternoon on tariffs, but as you mentioned, President Lai Ching-te also released a statement on his Facebook page last night saying that tariffs based on the trade deficit do not reasonably reflect the highly complementary and substantive trade relationship between Taiwan and the United States, and that regarding the many unreasonable aspects of the tariffs, he's instructed the cabinet to continue to negotiate vigorously with the U.S. and safeguard the interests of Taiwan. Now, a 32% tariff on most products will certainly have an effect here, but it's important to note that the semiconductors were actually exempt from these tariffs. And that's especially important in Taiwan, where the semiconductor industry accounts for 60% of all export value. Now, it's important also to point out, though, that most Taiwanese chips that end up in the United States don't end up there as standalone products. Rather, they're often found inside finished products like computers and AI servers that are assembled in Taiwan. And it's these completed products that actually make up a much larger portion of Taiwan's exports to the United States. And it's unclear if these tariffs will apply to those finished products. And also, Trump also said that specific tariffs on chips themselves are coming. So to learn more about what the White House's motivations were for the tariffs and how it might affect the tech industry, I spoke with Dave Nicholson of Futurum Group. And I began by asking him how the tariffs might specifically affect Taiwan's industry.
There's going to be a lot of negotiation involved. And specifically, when you look at how critical Taiwan is in the semiconductor manufacturer world, there's no chance that 34%, 32%, whatever the number is going to be levied against everything TSMC does, as an example. If you need something, you will pay the additional fees. Someone will. To the extent that there are perfect substitutes that are less expensive, there will be a movement to those substitutes. In the case of what TSMC builds and delivers to the market, there aren't substitutes. They dominate this space, especially in certain scale of technology.
Well, we know that a big goal of the Trump administration with these tariffs is to bring high-tech manufacturing back to the United States. And recently in a TV interview, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, said that there's nothing about Taiwan that they should be making semiconductors. How would you respond to that?
I would say, with a heavy dose of sarcasm, I would say he is absolutely correct. There is no reason at all, except for the incredible amount of expertise required. And it's absurd. It doesn't. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. It's years and years and years to get to the point where other manufacturers can do what TSMC does, and TSMC has earned that spot. To say there is no reason why chips need to be manufactured in Taiwan, sure, right. You could, in theory, do these things in other places that have access to humans, water, and power. But that belies a lack of understanding of the complexity that's involved.
Now, as Nicholson pointed out, the 32% tariffs won't take effect until April 9th, and there's sure to be a lot of negotiations until then. And it's at that point, Tiffany, that we'll have a better understanding of exactly how Taiwan's industries will be affected.
Thanks, Chris. That was Chris Gorin with the latest on the tariffs. Stock markets around the world have tumbled on fears Donald Trump's tariffs will trigger a global downturn. Rosie Greninger reports.
This is the moment the American stock market opened on Thursday, but it was all downhill from here. Wall Street closed with major losses after US President Donald Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on imports from across the world. Claiming the US had been ripped off by foreigners for decades, Trump set a baseline tariff of 10% on all goods coming into the US, taking the maximum rate to over 50% for some countries.
Well, the market is down today because the tariff announcement ended up being more extreme than most investors had anticipated. And because of it being extreme, investors are now worried about what the reciprocal tariffs will end up being with the retaliatory tariffs by our trading partners.
Liberation Day, waiting for a long
Calling the announcement Liberation Day, Trump claimed these measures will boost American manufacturing and, in his words, make America wealthy again. But with US markets already reeling, the US president has attempted to play down the impacts, saying it was to be expected.
So it was a sick patient. It went through an operation on Liberation Day, and it's going to be a booming country, a very booming country. It's going to be amazing, actually, and we see it because we have trillions of dollars committed to come in, trillions.
It's the biggest upheaval of global trade norms since the Second World War. also sending shockwaves through global exchange, with stock markets in the Asia-Pacific region falling for a second day. And global leaders have been left scrambling to respond. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen calling the move a major blow to the world economy.
I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism.
She vowed Europe would take a unified approach and is preparing countermeasures if negotiations to fight the tariffs fail. Her comments echo a stance of opposition from a number of countries, including China, who also vowed to hit back, while Canada has already moved to impose reciprocal tariffs.
And today I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States. You know, we take these measures reluctantly, and we take them in ways that it's intended and will cause maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada.
Many other countries are taking the approach of diplomacy, amongst them Australia, Switzerland, Italy, Ukraine and the UK.
We are taking a calm approach, acting in the national interest. And the national interest is to continue our negotiations for a deal with the US, which we made big progress on, and to ensure that we work with the sectors and the industries most impacted.
Financial experts are warning that nobody in the world will benefit from Trump's new tariff policy, including the US, also cautioning it could lead to a recession. As countries move to respond, the stock market is first to feel the impacts of the uncertainty, with most markets down as investors brace for a full-blown trade war. Eason Penn and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Asian stock markets are among the hardest hit following the tariff announcements. Japan's market led the slide, with the Nikkei index dropping more than 2% early on Friday. It's on track for its biggest weekly loss since March 2020, down around 9% for the week. Markets in South Korea, Australia, and India all fell. Meanwhile, stock exchanges in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and mainland China are closed for the tomb sweeping holiday. U.S. media outlet The Information says TSMC and Intel are discussing an agreement that would see the two chipmakers work together to revive Intel's flagging foundry business. TSMC, the world's biggest contract chipmaker, would reportedly have a 20% stake in the new joint venture in exchange for providing Intel with its know-how and training. U.S. chip giant Intel has struggled to keep pace with the industry in recent years. The company lost 60% of its value in 2024. The Information said that the U.S. government is heavily involved in trying to broker the deal, part of its efforts to revive its domestic semiconductor industry. TSMC declined to comment on the report. Yeol has been dismissed as South Korea's president after the country's constitutional court upheld his impeachment. Yoon was impeached for a brief martial law declaration late last year that included the deployment of the military to the National Assembly, actions the court says violated the Constitution and rule of law. Korea has 60 days to hold a presidential election. Yoon is awaiting a separate criminal trial for inciting insurrection. Indonesia's Mount Marapi has erupted, shooting a column of ash 1,500 meters into the air. Authorities in West Sumatra province have issued a level 2 alert that's the third highest on scale. They're warning people to stay at least 3 kilometers away from the volcano. Mount Marapi is one of the country's most active volcanoes. A previous eruption in 2023 killed 24 climbers. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Before we go, check out this newborn Malayan tapir cub in Spain. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.